Participants, please take a seat. So we are very happy to see you at this event concerning the execution of recommendation of Ombudsperson with respect to war affected persons. I hope you already had your coffee and ready to start the work. So two technical administrative issues. First of all, in Facebook, we are now broadcasted, and there are many people who registered to this event. They can ask questions too. And second, if there is a red alarm alert, we will have to go to the shelter, that's floor -1, where we will continue our event. So today, we have quite an important event, so I would like to offer the floor to Mr. Yanchik, head of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine. Please, the floor is yours. You have can have simultaneous interpretation.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Dear Mr. Dmytro Lubinets, Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Tkachenko, Member of the Parliament of Ukraine, Mr. Minister, all participants, dear colleagues, both present here and online. First of all, let me express words of support and solidarity with all Ukrainian partners and the people of Ukraine. For almost 20 months, you are standing strong and resilient, confronting the full-scale aggression of the Russian Federation. As Maria Pejčinović-Burić, the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, stated in her annual report, the aggression against Ukraine has caused extraordinary suffering, thousands of deaths, millions of refugees, horrifying stories of torture, rapes, and loss. We yearn for a return to peace and a sustainable peace based on justice. The Council of Europe is present here on the ground to offer our support and expertise, including on the path of Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. Dear friends, following the Russian full-scale invasion, the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe condemned all violations of international law, including international human rights law and international humanitarian law, in particular attacks against civilians and civilian objects, including civilian infrastructure, cultural and religious heritage, and the environment of Ukraine, and highlighted the necessity to ensure comprehensive accountability for internationally wrongful acts. I would like to highlight the importance of the accountability aspect. In that context, the Committee of Ministers, as of 12th of May 23, resolved to establish the enlarged partial agreement on the register of damages caused by the aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. The work of the register of damages, including its digital platform with all data concerning claims and evidence recorded therein, is intended to constitute the first component of a future international compensation mechanism, which may include a claims commission and a compensation fund. Last month, on 11th of September 23, the Ministers of Justice of the Council of Europe met in Riga at the Conference on the Path to Justice for Ukraine, advancing accountability, reuniting children with their families, and supporting the resilience of its justice system. In the conference declaration, the Ministers of Justice of the Council of Europe established the so-called Riga principles in order to effectively achieve comprehensive accountability, including focused and efficient functioning of the register of damages. The first and foremost principle mentioned in this declaration is the victim-centered approach, which derives from the state's obligation to provide remedies and redress to victims, in particular the most vulnerable, such as women and children. In parallel, the Ukrainian authorities are taking numerous legal and policy measures aimed at providing remedies and support to various categories of war-affected people suffering as a result of the Russian Federation aggression. We welcome the efforts of the national authorities towards establishing domestic reparation mechanisms based on victim-centered and human rights-based approach. In this regard, today's presentation of progress of implementation of the recommendations given in the special report of the Commissioner for Human Rights of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine on observance of the rights of persons affected by the armed aggression of the Russian Federation demonstrates strong commitment of Ukraine to ensure better protection and restoration of the war-affected people's rights. We appreciate our close cooperation with the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights and our all respectful national partners. The effective implementation of the Council of Europe Action Plan, Resilience, Recovery, Reconstruction for Ukraine 23-26, which comprehensively addresses inter alia such issues as the war-affected people's rights. We are convinced that by our joint efforts, we can effectively contribute to the improvement of the situation of those people and the alleviation of their suffering. During these dark times, the Council of Europe stands with Ukraine on the way to justice and recovery. Thank you very much for your attention.
Дякую. Давайте подякуємо всі нашому першому спікеру.
Thank you. Let's express our thanks to our first speaker. Thank you for your support. And now I'd like to offer the floor to another member of today's meeting, People's Deputy of Ukraine, Maxim Tkachenko, who is a member of the Committee for Human Rights and also a representative in Interfaction Association, internally displaced persons. Thank you, Irina, for moderation, for the perfect organization of similar events. I'd like to thank you, Dmitro, as usual, for your invitation, for our continuous communication and cooperation between our committee and in general between the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada. Today I cannot see our colleagues, so I'd like to thank you on behalf of the whole Parliament of Ukraine for what you do and what your representative offices do. We can clearly see your efforts at the international level. I'd like to tell you sincerely today I entered and asked Olga, will Petro will be with us? Unfortunately, she said, I saw the day before yesterday you were abroad. You posted about that event, but still today you're with us, and I want to thank you for your work. I'd like to thank the new head of the Office of Council of Europe and Ukraine. Thank you indeed for being with us, with Ukraine, you personally, all your team, and the whole of Council of Europe. Thank you indeed. Thanks to our international partner who are represented in this room. You know what I think is that Ombudsperson's office in our country demonstrates the right way for public institutions to work, to operate. And I'll tell you that I read, well, not in full, but certainly with attention the special report of the Ombudsman, and when I was invited to take part in this meeting, in this event, I actually started checking which points of these recommendations have been completed, which are in the process of execution. I got in touch with some of the actors, and I asked Olga and many other actors, is that indeed the current situation? And they confirmed yes, and I think our ombudsperson, Petro Lubinetz, will now speak about that, because that's actually what our today's meeting is devoted to. It's not just about saying and announcing something, it's also about monitoring execution of these tasks and recommendations. And today's meeting is devoted to the progress in implementation of these recommendations, and I am happy to tell you that all recommendations of our Ombudsperson's office have been implemented, and I'd like to thank all respective institutions for this effort. I know that most of the work was actually for the cabinet of ministers, so I'd like to thank all the actors, our profile ministry, and Ms. Irina Vereshchuk, the deputy minister. I'd like to thank Mr. Baradai and your team for your cooperation with the Ombudsperson office and for execution of the recommendations. We know that one of the key recommendations included in the special report, it was issued just recently, about a year ago, that's recommendation on reparations. We understand how difficult this matter is from the very beginning, but it's also one of the key requirements for our people to actually satisfy the needs of those who were affected by the war initiated by the Russian Federation. I'm sure we will execute this one. We know the Council of Europe will certainly give us a hand in this work. And also, I'd like to thank, since I have this opportunity, I'd like to thank to each one of you, all representatives of international organizations, Council of Europe, ministries, and everybody who is with us online for support from your side, for support provided to all the affected people. Of course, we have all been affected, but some were affected much more than others. So our thanks, sincere thanks, namely for the assistance, because these war-affected people include the internally displaced persons. We know that my family and I have been IDPs for already 10 years. My homeland is under occupation of the Russian Federation, Luhansk Oblast, and today, starting from last summer, almost all of Luhansk Oblast is under occupation. That's about 95-96% of the oblast territory. This is the best occupied oblast in our country. So we are waiting for recovery and return of these lands. And we certainly will wait for the people to come back, including those who are abroad. And we need to make sure that they continue feeling themselves Ukrainians. We need to make sure that they understand. We remember about them. We want all of them to come back home. So thank you all, and I'm really proud to have this cooperation in these difficult times. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you indeed. Maxim actually ate some of my bread. He told us who will be the next speaker and what we intend to discuss. So we are moving towards the main part of our event. I'd like to now to pass the floor to Ombudsperson of Верховної Ради of Ukraine, Mr. Dmytro Lubinets. So it's analysis of execution of a special report. So the floor is yours. Yes, thank you. Good morning, esteemed colleagues, esteemed Mr. Tkachenko, esteemed head of Council of Europe Representative Office, representatives of charity funds, international organizations, central and local executive authorities, and other participants of this event. Well, I know for sure that's probably for all of us, today's event is unique, at least for our institution. It's the first event of this kind. I'll tell you candidly that the first special report issued by our institution after I was appointed to this position was special report on analysis of the violations of the rights of the citizens of Ukraine by the Russian Federation during the period from 24th December to 1st October 23. I have this document with me. That's a milestone for me, the first document issued since I had held this office. So then we did our analysis and realized that during the 9 years of aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, no analysis of any violated rights had ever been conducted. So that was a surprise for me. So my team and I tried to have as objective approach as possible to our recommendations. We understand the financial condition of our state. We understand that most of the state budget have to be allocated for defense purposes as a first priority. But in the meantime, the special report contained 53 specific recommendations, which I, as an ombudsperson of Ukrainian Parliament, indeed proposed for implementation in the real life. So now it's time to analyze what has been done. So that's the second document, the progress of execution of recommendations. And today's event is about, first of all, showing to all representatives, first of all, of the executive branch of power, that I have no intention to issue any recommendations or annual report of the Ombudsperson just to check the box. If my institution issues with my signature any recommendations, be sure I will monitor the execution and the reasons why recommendation was not fulfilled, I see as three options. I mean, option one, recommendation was executed, or second, not executed, but in the process of execution, and number three, recommendation was not executed. And then I will want to hear arguments. How come and what are the reasons? So it was 14th December 24 when I presented our report, special report. Now we prepared a small presentation. We understand that, first of all, when drafting our special report, we focused on violations of our citizens' rights by the Russian Federation. The scale and systemic nature of these violations caused by Russian Federation. We also focus on the need to change some rights of the Ukrainian citizens, and these were the argument why we needed to issue the special report to really look at the real violations of human rights. So this report contains 5 sections. IDP rights, people under temporary occupation, and also citizens who found shelter in other countries. And also a big deal of attention is paid to deportation and other serious violations of humanitarian law. In our special report, we gave 36 recommendations to solve the problems caused by the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. And upon execution of this recommendation, I can make public statement. According to my data, 36 recommendations were successfully fulfilled, and 16 of them are in the process of execution, and only one was not executed, and even the process of execution implementations have not started yet. We will get back to this recommendation later.
В тому числі заходом
Our today's event may become the event which will result in specific proposals on how to start the process of the implementation of the last recommendation.
на екрані ви бачите,
On the screen, you can see that the subjects of the implementation of the recommendation of the special report were the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, the local authorities and organizations. Cabinet of Ministers fulfilled 9, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs 7, the Ministry of Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories 6, and the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine 3 recommendations implemented. As for the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, the first recommendation was implemented by the members of parliament. And for me, it became a nice surprise because compared to the legal processes, say the amendment of the legislation, it takes a lot more time than, say, the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers. So I would like to commend the role of the Ukrainian parliament that immediately started implementing the recommendations. First of all, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine resolved one of the most painful and relevant issues after February 24, 2022. This is the payment of pensions to the people in Crimea. And there were amendments made to the law of Ukraine as to the proportional recalculation of their work experience. And the Ministry of Reintegration designed a new strategy concerning the internal displacement and also the operational plan of its implementation. The new strategy is, first of all, the response of the state to new challenges of the mass displacement of population caused by the full-scale aggression of the Russian Federation. You know that as of now, Ukraine has officially registered 4.9 million citizens that have official IDP status, and it may be the largest internal displacement since the Second World War. And taking into account the constant shelling and bombing of the infrastructure and buildings, the issue arose about the compensation. And the law on compensation for the damaged and destroyed property as a result of the hostilities, acts of terrorism, diversions caused by the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, and the state register of property damaged or destroyed as a result of military hostilities, terrorist acts. And the law gives the right to the citizens to compensations and also the legal grounds for provision of such compensations. And to fulfill the requirements of the law, the Cabinet of Ministers adopted a resolution that regulates the order of assessment of the damages caused and the administering of all the stages of reconstruction of damaged or destroyed property. I think that today the representative of the Ministry of Infrastructure will tell us more about it. The next slide is focused on the protection of rights of the citizens who are now on the temporarily occupied territories. An important push to protect their rights is the adoption by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine of the law on amendments of legal acts concerning the simplification of the access to legal aid. It gives the right to citizens to free legal aid via electronic means of communication and electronic email addresses. And under conditions of dysfunctional courts on the temporarily occupied territories, this is seen as the only mechanism of provision of free legal aid. Another aspect is the protection of rights of those who receive education. We had meetings with the Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine where we discussed these issues. And I would like to state that the Верховна Rada of Ukraine adopted in the first reading the law on amending laws of Ukraine on recognition of the results of education of persons living on the temporarily occupied territories. The aim of this law is to provide the right to persons living on the temporarily occupied territories to continue their education. These people who receive education will have a special mechanism of attestation to recognize the results of their education, and you will hear it from the Ministry of the Education and Science of Ukraine. Also, the mechanism of recognition of the territories as temporarily occupied or deoccupied. This mechanism was designed by the Ministry of Reintegration, and we have a list of territories that were temporarily occupied or under occupation. And we should also emphasize on the state registration of the civilian state, such as the birth, deaths, and weddings on the temporarily occupied territories. We raised the issue numerous times that applying to the court is quite problematic when you try to establish this fact, and we carried out joint meetings on these issues, and they resulted in the fact that the Cabinet of Ministers suggested a proposal on amending the laws on specificities of registration of acts of civilian state on the temporarily occupied territories and also outside of Ukraine. And it was suggested to introduce the out-of-court procedure of registration of the acts that took place on the temporarily occupied territories. And there is a remark to this draft law, and I talked to the members of Parliament and we had discussions, and I'm convinced that the members of Parliament will find arguments to adopt this law at least in the second reading. The amendments will be introduced, but we need to do this definitely because it will make life of the citizens easier, the citizens whose rights are violated daily. The third part of the report was focused on the violation of the international humanitarian law and the human rights during hostilities. And the Верховна Rada adopted the action plan on reconstruction of temporarily occupied territories and communities to restore the functioning of these territories. This document is an important step to rebuild and reconstruct our territories that were under occupation. It is extremely important because you see that the armed forces of Ukraine deoccupy step by step the territory of our state. Therefore, we must be ready to quickly rebuild and restore Ukrainian government and Ukrainian authorities on our territories. And so the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine adopted as a basis of the also the law on protection on the means of civil protection, and we are talking about the field of civil protection and also shelters and the control over the state of these. For concerns the rights of our citizens who left the territory of Ukraine as a result of armed aggression to seek a safer life abroad. I would like to emphasize the importance of the work of the Ministry of External Affairs and also the Migration Service. And we have also the state enterprise document represented abroad, and during our working meetings, where we also had the head of the State Migration Service, Ms. Naumenko. We also had the representatives of the Department of the Consulate Services of the Ministry of and I said that it is a unique, novel instrument that helps our citizens abroad. That's why now we have 11 separate divisions of the document in the Republic of Poland, the Republic of Turkey, the Czech Republic, the Slovak Republic, the Federal Republic of Germany, and the Kingdom of Spain. We need to continue with these practices and taking into account the number of our citizens abroad. First of all, it depends on again, the State Migration Service, on the opening up of new divisions of this enterprise, and I'm sure that the representative of the Migration Service will speak about it, but the position of the Ministry of External Affairs is important here, how the system of the ministry is coping, because here we understand that, first of all, we need to hear the position of the ministry. And lastly, we are moving on to the most painful topic, the protection of rights of the deported, the forcefully displaced, and the last section of the report focuses on this issue. As of now, the Russian Federation continues, regrettably, the procedure of deportation of the Ukrainian children, and I published a special report, separate report, where we wrote about the activities of the Russian Federation that must be recognized by the international community as a war crime, namely the genocide of the Ukrainian nation. It should be noted that the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, when working on this issue, when we help with the return of children via other countries, it's important. We also engage international organizations to help return the forcefully displaced. And the Cabinet of Ministers adopted the resolution concerning the procedure about the deported and or forcefully displaced children. And the question of the return of these children is the burning topical issue, the top issue. And I would like to inform everyone that the last Ukrainian child that we returned arrived to Kiev this night, and this morning I met a young boy who was under occupation on the territory of the Russian Federation. We are doing everything we can. I mean, the team of all of our country, the president, first of all, so that all the children deported since 2014 are returned, and that the Russian Federation is punished for these actions. And to finalize this presentation, we are coming back to the one recommendation that remained unimplemented. I suggested designing a draft law concerning the legal status and social guarantees of people who were affected by the armed aggression against Ukraine. We do not have the legal definition of such a person, and this is happening in the 10th year of aggression. So, in fact, we need to categorize the people affected by the aggression. We need to set up the mechanism of restitution, compensation, and rehabilitation and satisfaction. Unfortunately, this recommendation remains unimplemented. The procedure of this designing and development of this draft law has not started yet, and hopefully the fulfillment of this recommendation will start with the working group that may include the members of parliament and NGOs, and if we would like to see the Office of the Council of Europe as the partner in implementation of this recommendation, because we need the international experience that was used after the Second World War, after other international military conflicts. We need to see how the countries that found themselves in a similar situation resolved the issue of compensations to all citizens that must be legally regarded as persons who were affected by the military aggression. And I would really like to see discussions and suggestions concerning our suggested vision of the implementation of this recommendation. And to sum up, I would like to say that I positively assess the implementation of the recommendations of the special report. Of course, it is clear that out of 53 recommendations, we saw 36 of them implemented. This is a high percentage, and it is an indication that after rising and this issue, everybody understands its importance, namely the fulfillment of these recommendations. And no matter what the situation is, I started with it and I would like to finish with it. We understand the situation in our country. We constantly ask our international partners for assistance, but I stand firm that the protection of rights of the citizens of Ukraine is, first of all, the task of our country itself, of Ukraine, and we need to show that we are ready to do everything to protect or to restore the rights of our citizens. No one will do this for us, and the protection of rights of Ukrainians worries, first of all, the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian government. Our partners may be our partners. I'm sorry for repeating myself, but they cannot be the leaders in these processes. They are our partners. Therefore, our task during such meetings is to raise these important topics, and every hour meeting must be
онлайн.
very sincere, very open, and I was notified that we have over 900 participants online joining us from all across Ukraine. So I would like to see these meetings becoming effective, open and clear. There is the issue, we need to resolve it, and we set up the tasks and specific deadlines for their implementations, and hoping for the positive outcome of our work.
Доповіді у нас точно це може виходити. І точно
As you can see, we can do it, at least with respect to a special report. So I think we can continue. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. I think the results are really impressive. Would like to join the thanks that you expressed with regard to Cabinet of Ministers of Verkhovna Rada for adopting appropriate legislation and secondary legislation, but these should not just stay in paper, so we need to pay attention to not only recommendations of the Ombudsperson, we also should rely on the local authorities of governments which would certainly engage in implementation of the recommendations adopted by Ukraine. Another administrative point is that we are broadcasted on YouTube, so you can invite your international partners who could see it, because there is translation into English too, so we are waiting for you, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all of your questions. So our Ombudsperson formulated very briefly the achievements for last year, and now we need to look at the key laws to make sure that they will be implemented. For that purpose, we invited the representatives of central executive authorities, and my on the floor, Mikhail Lubinetsky, Deputy Minister of Education and Science. He will report on draft law on the possibility to recognize the diplomas and certificates who actually receive these documents at temporarily occupied territories. Good morning. I hope you can see this presentation. Let's first look at Mikhail, I think, to greet him. Can you put the speaker on the screen? Yes, Mikhail. So, our greetings. So, what's your vision of implementation of this draft law once it becomes a law? Thank you for inviting me. First of all, sorry I cannot be with you offline. So, I'd like to share with you position of my ministry to make it possible to recognize diplomas and certifications issued by training institutions on temporarily occupied territories. Of course, there's great concern for all of us. We all want Ukrainians, not only territories, come back to Ukraine so that our citizens can continue their development, personal development, but there are some peculiarities for those who actually completed some training and education on the occupied territories. So did I manage to switch to yes? Okay, so there are some ideological imperatives that we need to keep in mind and be very candid with them, because they often are very contradictory and may generate some quite difficult questions. First of all, we believe that the return to Ukraine must be attractive for the people. I mean, territories and the people. And of course, any documents issued by the occupiers should never be recognized because thus we will confirm their legitimacy. We need protect Ukrainian space against anti-Ukrainian elements because function of the education, the mission of the education is to create the global vision. So if we deal with some zombies, we need to somehow find a way to unzombie them. And it's not only about merely education, but also the shaping out the global vision, the vision of the world. And we need to keep in mind all these factors. So what are our principles? Any results, any diplomas of training certified at temporarily occupied territories can be checked and recognized in conditionally safe boundaries. After that, they would be duly certified. What we mean by that? The documents issued by occupiers cannot be recognized in any manner, but actually the knowledge as such can be checked, verified, and then confirmed by the official document issued by Ukrainian legitimate authorities. Especially here, it's about the elements of our humanitarian education. The state is interested that the individuals who had education in occupied territories then receive some additional humanitarian education on the territory controlled by the state of Ukraine. False high education, general high education, the results can be recognized through the annual evaluation, including state attestation, which constitute the basis of the issuance of respective document on education. In fact, this is quite a simplified approach, but with respect to high schools, we understand that temporarily occupied territories also include have been occupied somewhere for 9 years, and of course there is some youth who already were educated and trained in the school, obeyed to the occupier. So what's the right way to recognize these results, or we need to add here some additional components. As far as professional vocational education is concerned, yes, the results can be certified on the basis of credits. I'm talking about qualification. Certification when a qualified worker can receive the respective certificate, including the batch opportunities for the bachelors to confirm their diplomas after passing the respective maybe correctional or additional courses on the territory controlled by the government of Ukraine. Now, higher education. Here there are many discussions about that. The idea is that 75% of the educational curricula should be covered by the educational process. And we're talking about 4 or 3 years of bachelor's training program. And actually, normally they study for 4 years. So out of them, 3 years can be probably recognized and certified, provided that they continue some additional education. You understand that for medical professions, for instance, these terms are longer. And actually, the candidates might be enrolled to the first year of education according to the quotas available for so-called budget paid students. Now, red line, so-called, it's about whether it's possible to confirm diploma if we don't know whether the individual underwent the also training which is related to his her citizenship, cultural values. So, of course, any diploma of that kind cannot be certified, and such individual will never be certified if we are talking about the levels of master's or bachelor's, PhD, or doctor in arts. So we are talking about, here we are talking about second or third level, so-called education after bachelor's degree. Any higher education, whether they are lawyers, international relations, history, whatever, of course will not be recognized by Ukraine if the training or education took place on the occupied territories. These are our red lines. I understand that there is large field for discussion, but we believe at my ministry that these positions are clearly stated in advance, so that when any specific laws are drafted or any secondary legislation is drafted, the position of the government is very clear and taken into consideration. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm ready.
Дякую дуже.
Thank you indeed.
Поки питань до вас немає.
So far, I cannot see any questions for you
Дуже дякуємо.
in Facebook or YouTube, so we want to thank you for your short presentation. You can return to your business, to your
Дуже нас підтримували.
work. Now I'd like to pass the floor to those who indeed provided us with significant support with regard to recommendations on recognition of diplomas and certifications issued on the occupied territories. That's representative of Crimea. Please, Olga, you have 5 minutes. Yes, good morning, colleagues. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this very important event. I'm happy that we have opportunity to discuss this draft law, because this is one of those draft laws which will foster the reintegration of the individuals who were on temporarily occupied territories. I don't want to repeat what the Ministry of Education has already said. This draft law has a very long history. We have been working on it as a team, including NGOs, Ombudsperson's office, Committee of the Parliament for Education, who were initiators. This year we supported it within the framework of Crimean platform. That's why it was actually voted before this event was implemented. Now it's between the first and second reading. There will be some additional work on this draft law, and hopefully in the end we'll have the fully fledged and duly adopted law. And the sooner we do it, the sooner we can launch that procedure of recognition and confirmation of the training obtained on temporarily occupied territories. During our discussions with regard to our vision on reintegration, we also discussed statistical information. For instance, those who are entering our universities in Q2, we found out that only 1,610 aspirants entered universities, and during the academic year, 90,000 individuals were studying at the universities. So you can see how many documents we will need to process after the occupation of Crimea. And this is a great opportunity to return our children, those who were educated on occupied territories, to return them back to Ukrainian context, thus allowing for so-called cognitive deoccupation. Also, this bill is one of the bills related to the reinstatement of the education after we return occupied territories under control. That's a whole roadmap devoted not only about infrastructure like building schools and print books and manuals, it also should include other processes like development and implementation of curricula for the children who had studied for 9 years on occupied territories where Ukrainian language was not taught at all, nor was taught to them the history of Ukraine. We already started efforts, and many of those who are present here at this event are involved in this work. So I did it in my 5 minutes. So I want to thank Ombudsperson's office, the Ministry of Education, and the Parliamentary Committee for Education, who all supported our efforts. And I hope those members of Parliament who are present here will learn more about this draft law when it appears in the Parliament for the second reading. Thank you, Olga. Today we have here Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine for European Integration, Irina Postolovska. Our welcome remarks. She will share with us about points related to disbursement of pensions on occupied territories, in particular Autonomous Republic of Crimea and City of Sevastopol. I'm very thankful for your invitation. My thanks to Ombudsperson for this very serious and important work and for raising this very important topic. I would like to outline just some challenges and problems with regard to pension insurance of individuals who moved from Autonomous Republic of Crimea and City of Sevastopol, including some decisions that have already been made. Actually, the special report mentioned key challenges faced by former inhabitants of Crimea for purposes of reinstating their pensions. In particular, due to lack of respective registers, they cannot reinstate their right to pension. The second point, they have great difficulties to confirm the periods of their pension insurance while they were working. Again, that's because of absence of initial documents to confirm pension insurance and labor activities. And thus it's not possible to confirm their right to the solidarity pension, pay-as-you-go pensions, and you know that insurance contributions were not transferred to the Ukrainian system for pension insurance. And third, it's a payment disbursement of pensions for the past periods. That's another problem. What we are doing to simplify the process of reinstatement of their rights to pension, to confirm the length or duration of the insurance period, we allowed to use additional sources of information on employment of the individual. I mean, two witnesses who worked with the applicant at the same enterprise or the same organization and whose length of employment was confirmed, their statement will be sufficient to confirm the real period of employment of the individual. Another point is that the legislation is needed for that purpose, and the government already submitted draft law to the parliament with regard to calculation of insurance period length pro rata, which means that the pensions will be paid if the individual can demonstrate that they do not receive any pension from the Russian Federation. The Parliamentary Committee for Social Policy already prepared the bill for the second reading, and the committee actually approved it for further approval by the Parliament. Also, I'd like to say that starting from September, we already approved procedure to pay social contributions. The special services were offering about 7.7 million hryvnias of voluntary contributions were made by more than 3,000 applicants. Out of them, 74% paid for them, and others paid for others.
Для виплат пенсій за минулі періоди цього року.
Concerning the payment of pensions during the last periods, the budget stipulates the allocations of 1 billion hryvnias, which is 850 million hryvnias more than last year. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Дякуємо, пані Ірино.
Thank you, Irina.
Наступне слово ми надаємо
And we give the floor to Ms. Людмила Sohak
державної реєстрації актів
as to the state registration of the acts of the civilian state, the Deputy Minister of Justice of Ukraine, on European integration. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, this topic is extremely important, and the question of registration of the civilian state is an important one, because wherever the people are under the government-controlled territories or temporarily occupied territories, they must have access to the documents of Ukraine. So this is the question of a legal field, and it is this issue is also this question is divided into the civil code and the range of strategic documents, and what we have today. This is the procedure that is stipulated by the legislation, the list of facts that subject to registration, the procedure that the Department of State Registration carry out this registration, and also the registry of such acts of civil status. So, registration of birth, we have a list of documents to be submitted for such registration: the medical certificate of birth, the conclusion that is drawn from the system of the Ministry of Health Service of Ukraine, and also the certificate of the medical institution where the child is, or the decision of the court, or the document provided by a foreign body. And as to the regulation of this procedure, the ministry issued an order on the state registrations of birth and martial law. I wanted to show you the slide, but unfortunately... Yes, this exact slide. So this order stipulates a procedure that allows to write to the electronic address and send the documents to register the birth. And this the template of this application is on the website. So the parents or one of the parents, sisters and brothers who are of age or step parents can receive such document. We already registered 92 such birth certificates. Concerning the order of the registration of deaths, the same order is stipulated. The application stipulates that there should be the certificate of death issued by by a medical institution, for example. And I wanted to talk about the court procedure stipulated by Article 317 of the Civil Code that stipulates that the application of the establishment of such a fact shall be submitted to any local court, irrespective of the location of the applicant. The court fees are not paid, and it's free of charge. So the parents or the caregivers can do this, and the copy is sent to the Department of the Registration of Civil Status, and the act of complaint does not render this decision invalid. So the number of registered decisions of the facts of births and deaths on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine starting 2016. So 64,863 births and 114,780 deaths. And the births in 2023, 4,000, and we of course understand what challenges our citizens face. We refer to the recommendations of the international organizations. We study the international practices. I wanted to focus on the UN decision on the occupation. And we have the law on ensuring the rights and liberties of the citizens of Ukraine on the temporarily occupied territories, which states that the acts issued by the occupation authorities are invalid, and except for the questions of births, deaths, and the registration of marriage. So the Ministry of Justice worked on the draft law on amending certain legal acts on the procedure of registration of civil status acts, and it was given to the Верховна Рада. Now it's under consideration of the Committee of Верховна Rada on Legal Policies. It's also suggested the amendments to the Civil Procedural Code, to the Law of Ukraine on registration of the civil acts, and status, and also the registration of births, marriages, and divorces and deaths. One of the novelties of this draft law is the possibility of foreign authorities, bodies to amend these acts of civil states, taking into account the needs of the citizens of Ukraine and taking into account the recommendations of our foreign partners. Thank you. Thank you, Ludmila. And this law was quite active in its development, and then it's somehow stalled. I do not think I can talk about the deadlines and the promotion of this law. The Ministry of Justice stands ready to provide its suggestions because we designed it, we worked on it, and we are ready to support it. Do you receive support from the committee? You know, the lawmaking process is always complex, and I'm sure that all the branches of the government are ready to support us in this. I would like to add that there are a lot of remarks on the part of the members of parliament, and the main criticism lies in that how we are going to control and confirm the information from the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Will this lead, after the adoption of this law, that on the temporarily occupied territories we will have birth and death certificates issued to the citizens of Ukraine on the mass scale? And this is the issue, and as we're told, it's not going to happen, and we need to do it. And why I also touched upon this topic. I personally met with some of the MPs from the committee, and who said that this is your recommendation, and we have these remarks 1, 2, 3. We want to hear specific responses, not only from you personally, more from the initiators of this draft law. Therefore, on my part, it's the message to the ministry that they are expecting specific arguments from the cabinet of ministers, specifically from you. If we need to organize a working meeting with our institution, we stand ready. We can invite the head of the profile committee, the members of parliament, but we need to invite most of them from the profile committee to arrange discussions. I'm ready to invite civil society organizations that support us. We all need to take into account the fact that it will make the life of our citizens easier. For me, this question is simple. The easier we make this procedure of receiving the Ukrainian documents, the easier it will be to return these people to Ukraine after the deoccupation of these territories. That's all from me. Thank you. A short remark. Indeed, the work on this draft law needs to involve a broad circle of stakeholders, because the Ministry of Justice does not own all the information, and we previously received other NGOs that worked on it, and we would be grateful for your support, for advocacy, and for promotion of this law. Great. Then I would like to add that we have several applications from people who left temporarily occupied territories, and specifically from Mariupol, and who left for abroad and with newborn children, and they cannot receive these documents, and we cannot do anything. We involved legal aid, and we cannot receive solutions, and the person cannot return to Ukraine because they are given the permit to return to Ukraine, but the child is not given such a permission. So this is why we need to work on this. If you don't mind, we will continue. Today we have the Deputy Minister on reintegration of temporarily occupied territories. Last year and this year they have been working actively to implement the recommendation of the Ombudsman, and a lot of legal acts were prepared concerning, for example, minimal standards and the strategy of the Ministry of Reintegration concerning IDPs. So, Alexei, the floor is yours. Thank you, dear Dmitro, Maxim, Mr. Lubinetz, dear Mr. Tkachenko, dear colleagues, I would like to say that the special report of the Ombudsman came at a time of the most striking challenges, the most large-scale displacements of people from and the territories where active hostilities were taking place, and all of us face the issue that our legislation, our legal basis do not work and cannot regulate the situation that was back then. And after the special report of the Ombudsman, it was a great push, and Mr. Lubinetz said that we managed to do a lot because all of us worked as a one team. And thanks to the cooperation with the Council of Europe and first of all, thanks to our NGOs, our international partners, UNHCR, IOM, the Red Cross of Ukraine that are here today, and many more others, we managed to design and to adopt a strategy of the state policy concerning internal displacement until 2025, and we adopted an operational plan. After this, the ministry, in close cooperation with the Office of the Ombudsman, the Council of Europe, and other international partners, started on analyzing and implementing the legal acts necessary to continue our work today, and some of them needed amendments, and therefore there was a request, and also to our our international partners, to our party union, and we set up a coordination office on the realization of rights and liberties of IDPs, and we had sessions of this office, and most of you are members of this office, and we discuss amendments to the legislation, the changes to the laws, and the implementation of policies of the ministry concerning IDPs. And the resolution on coordination centers of support of civilian populations and all Oblast and Kiev civil and military administrations were set up to, again, to support civilians and also specifically IDPs. And then the government adopted a resolution on IDPs and on the councils and at regional state administrations, and complex regional programs of support for IDPs are underway. Now we have already 19 such programs adopted. Need to find the slide.
Значить, дуже нагальною потребою і
So a real relevant need which has not been satisfied before, and actually here the initiator of for solution was the office of Ombudsperson, And the question was mainly about the residential opportunities for IDPs. Just recently, the Ombudsperson's office conducted a special meeting, and many regions actually supported the suggested approaches, and now amendments to Cabinet of Ministers Resolution 930 are about to be implemented. They were submitted to coordination team group, and soon we will be able to come up with the documents to request approval by the central executive authorities. Thus, we'll have more opportunities to check the situation in each region. We can request assistance and support from local governments where needed. And also, we're very thankful to our international partners for their support and for responding to our request for assistance in the reconstruction and the rebuilding of temporary residence available to IDPs, so that they can feel that they are in comfort conditions at a respective level according to respective standards. So these are the main points that we completed. Now there are two more points that we're working on. Is improvement of residential conditions for IDPs. That's about constructing social residential houses for them. We are working with our partners. It's about housing for IDPs, about the 1,000 loans were already issued to the respective entity. We're talking here about billion hryvnias, and these loans will cover the needs till the end of the year. The German government has already offered 17 million euros and 18 million euros of assistance were approved in support of this program by the same German government for the next year. Talking about the improvement of resident living conditions for IDPs, the conceptual design of such housing was already developed and approved for 10 the various facilities in western regions of Ukraine, plus a memorandum will be signed to construct housing in Kyiv Oblast. Talking about projects to support social infrastructure, all these 6 projects are being implemented by the Ukrainian Fund for Social Investment. Out of them, 10 are residential housing. For instance, the city of Chuguyev in 2023, the building, it's Kharkiv Oblast, for 56 apartments was constructed. So the project goes on. There is also a special program in support of Eastern Ukraine, the controlled territories. Here is rather about improvement of medical and social services, but in 2023, thanks to this program, modular residential town was opened, which could accommodate 630 IDPs. We clearly understand our further tasks and what is being done with regard to recommendations of special report of the Ombudsperson. This is the informational system to collect the data with regard to the needs of IDPs and to streamline coordination activities between all branches of power, meaning local governments and ministries, etc. This process already started with support of MOM and Council of Europe. They receive all kinds of assistance. They said offer all kinds of assistance, and we intend that within half a year this program will be drafted, developed, and implemented. More importantly, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you.
Ми переходимо до питання, яке
Now we move to the point which is very important for those
слова
whose houses were destroyed. I pass the floor to Natalia Kozlovska, Deputy
громад,
Minister for Development of Communities, Territories and Infrastructure of Ukraine. We have her online.
Наталя.
So please, Natalia, the floor is yours. Can you hear us?
Пані Наталя,
Natalia?
вона з нами точно, але
She's certainly with us, but we cannot hear her so far.
Колеги, доброго дня. Нарешті мене
Yes, colleagues, good morning. Finally, I got my sound.
презентувати
So now I can present you with
ті зміни в законодавство, які
amendments to the legislation that we already implemented. Thanks to this, we can launch the so-called e-recovery program. I'll share with you the aspects of the project that are already operational. I can explain how the citizens whose housing was destroyed or damaged can receive compensation to buy new housing or to repair the damaged facilities. This is the law which was signed by the President earlier this year, which envisages a number of mechanisms to receive compensation. So first component is compensation to conduct minor repairs. It can be requested through DIA application. People can receive compensation where the maximum amount would be 200,000 hryvnias. What an individual needs to do to obtain such compensation? First, they have to apply through the electronic application and to confirm with the documents that their house or apartment was damaged because of aggression of the Russian Federation. Then this application will be referred to the respective self-government, which will send the commission to check the damages, and the blank form of this checklist was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, and it covers all potential damages that can exist, including cost of recovery of each component, each damaged component. So the only thing they need to do is to summarize the damages. Based on this checklist, the automatic calculation of the respective amount of compensation is done, and then this amount automatically is sent for disbursement. So actually, the owner can spend this money in two areas. One is to buy construction materials or to pay for construction and repairs. Thus, we make sure that the owner receives this amount, especially for the purpose of recovery of their living areas. So now there were many applications, most successful component. About 50,000 individuals have intentions to apply, and this approach has demonstrated its efficiency. Indeed, the people can efficiently receive money and spend it to conduct the repair. Second aspect is a major overhaul of multi-story apartments where the people cannot receive compensation because not only the apartments are damaged, but also common use areas, which means that the apartment building needs to be reconstructed instead of just giving compensation to the apartment owners. It's if a roof is damaged or whatever else, where you cannot operate through the compensation. So there is another mechanism, Resolution 118 of Cabinet of Ministers, where the fund of liquidation of consequences of aggression of Russian Federation is applied. So here we're talking about the amount higher than 200,000 and the cap is 500,000 hryvnias. We expect that within a few weeks this tool will become operational. Again, people can apply through DIA application or through the administrative service centers. Again, the Commission will default to record the nature and the volume of damages. The people will receive this disbursement in two portions, 50% first, and the Commission will make sure that this money is spent on the purpose and the respective works are started. Then another 50% of this compensation can be disbursed. Thus, we get a situation where the people will be able to renovate their private houses again by receiving money on their banking accounts, which can be spent to either buy construction materials or hire services. The third component for compensation is quite wide. This is compensation for destroyed property. What do we mean by that? That's something that cannot be renovated at all. And here we are talking about both deoccupied territory and on the occupied territories. Talking about deoccupied territories of Ukraine, very soon the people can apply through the application to receive compensation for destroyed property. And they have two options. If it's an apartment in the apartment building and the apartment building cannot be rebuilt, then the people receive compensation which would allow them to buy an apartment on any territory or region of Ukraine at both the primary or secondary market. That's for apartments. If it's about private house, the people can receive compensation to reconstruct the building, the house, on the territory of their land that they own. Talking about currently occupied territories, again, here the people also will be able to receive compensation and receive the respective resolution by Cabinet of Ministers will be passed very soon. So the local self-governments that moved out of the occupied territories can use any digital photographs taken at the occupied territory so that they can indeed calculate the amount of compensations for those who moved out of the occupied territory so that these people who fled from the occupied territories can again buy any housing. It was a difficult decision. Of course, we made some proposals to the government, central government, to make sure that local self-governments will be able to make the proper decision to pay this compensation. And fourth way to obtain compensation is for the households which had their property damaged and renovated it at their own expense, not through donors or any organizations. Thus, this mechanism of compensation will allow these people for receiving compensation for the work that they had already done. These are our approaches to compensations. The components 1, 2, and 3 are already operational at different phases. Instrument number 4, we expect it to be operational starting from January next year. That's all I have, dear colleagues. I just wanted to show you how we intend to organize these compensations.
Таким чином,
А,
проект з 10.05.
Now my colleagues will share with you the project that started on 10th April. It's about compensation for veterans, for people with disability, members of families of perished warriors, the families with many children, orphans, and children deprived of parents' care. Again, this compensation is provided in a single tranche up to 200,000. So this is category A, that's minor overhaul, minor repairs. Well, the category B, if this requires more repairs, 500,000 for private houses, 350,000 for apartments. And here are mechanisms. What the owner needs to do. First, apply through the application. Second, they need to open a banking account. The bank which is partner to the program, they need to open e-recovery card. Then they need to apply for compensation through the application. Stage 4. Step 4, the locally formed commission of the local self-government will check the actual needs and repairs. And step 5, they can receive assistance to repair their location, their premises. Now, talking about destroyed property, we started for September. Priority groups are, of course, veterans, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable categories. Here, the peculiarities are in that the certificate for housing remains valid for 5 years. And within 5 years after the individuals buy this property, they will not be able to resell it, meaning this is compensation for the people who live on the territory of Ukraine and who are socially active. Talking compensation for construction purposes. The system will make sure that the owner indeed owns the parcel of the land, and the respective funds will be transferred to e-recovery account. How the local authorities will calculate the amount of compensation? Here we apply certain approaches according to Resolution 600 of Cabinet of Ministers. According to this resolution, local self-government is supposed to apply specific formula. This formula includes first the cost, the market cost of 1 square meters in the region as of January 2022. And here we did it with the help of our partners from Visicom project. Thus, we define the average cost of 1 square meter of housing on the territory of Ukraine based on the contracts concluded with the others. Then we added some territorial multipliers which increase or reduce the cost of this 1 square meter. So based on the formula as provided by the resolution of Cabinet of Ministers, the local authorities, the local government can transparently and reliably calculate the amount of compensation due. Talking about the mechanism, how to apply for compensation, Natalia, excuse me, your time is over, please. Yes, I will. Yes, that's my last slide. So what an owner has to do? First, again, apply informational notice through the apply for compensation, receive the respective solution or decision of the local self-government, to choose the house to repair or to construct, and then use the money to buy whatever is necessary to have this housing. So we already received more than several thousand of applications for such compensation, and now the local civil governments consider applications for total amount of more than 4 million hryvnia. So the mechanism is operational, and people can now have opportunities to buy property. Well, the mechanism is quite complicated, but it is done with consideration of all the requirements of the Cabinet of Ministers resolution. It certainly includes the cost of the damaged property, which will be part of the register for the registration of damages that we will use. That's all I have. Thank you.
Дякуємо, пані Наталія.
Thank you,
Пані
Natalia.
Наталія, є лише одне питання.
There's one question remaining. The policy of compensation only concerns the destruction and damages after the full-scale invasion. Are you planning to amend it to take into account that property that was damaged or destroyed before? Yes, it's a very difficult question. The Ministry of Reintegration had its own policy concerning compensation, so we will need the political decision to concerning combination or the impossibility of such combination of this mechanism. So this question requires systemic approach and systemic revision. And as soon as we cope with these components that I reviewed, I think we will be able to and do it. Yeah, it's kind of a vague answer, which sounds more like no than yes. Well, this question is not exactly within our competence. So when we will join the Ministry of Reintegration on this way. Thank you. Alexei Borodai said the Cabinet of Ministers. Yeah, well, the Cabinet of Ministers is a general body. Thank you for your presentation. We hope that in the future, when the time for the next special report comes, you will work just as well. In the chat, so the participants are asking whether we can share this information. Since we provided this information to you, yes. Please do share, because the local authorities may need this information, because the more people receive this assistance, the better the result of the project will be. Thank you. Now we have the next speaker, Ms. Natalia Naumenko, the head of the State Migration Service, concerning the opening of the divisions of the state enterprise document in other countries. Good afternoon, dear participants. Hopefully you can see my presentation. Just give us a minute. We would like to welcome you. The Ombudsman has another meeting scheduled, but really wants to see your presentation. For now, we only see you.
Зараз ми спробуємо включити презентацію. Хвилинку, тому що туди...
Please give us a minute to share the presentation.
Ми запускаємо презентацію чи
Ні, ми
пані Наталя, ви.
презентацію. Я сподіваюся, зараз її буде...
I hope that you'll be able to see it.
О, супер.
Добре, дякую. Доброго дня.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, dear colleagues. So, when we talk about the representations of the State Migration Service via our divisions of the State Enterprise document, it means that we establish the contact with the citizens through the issue of documents, namely ID cards, foreign passports. We all remember that horrible February and March 2022 when the full-scale aggression started and when the military, when the martial law was imposed, and we saw that situation on the railway stations. And we are extremely grateful to our colleagues from the Migration and Border Services of EU countries, letting our citizens come in either without any documents or with invalid documents. And that in February 2022, that was the way out that allowed us to quickly gain entry to the EU countries for our citizens. But when they started applying for social assistance to the foreign authorities, they started receiving documents that allowed to identify our citizens and to provide them with payments, with compensation. So what the State Migration Services did, and the consulates started issuing documents. We started receiving citizens and doing all this issue of documents manually and in accordance with the information of the UNHCR. As of October 10, 2023, over 6 million people left Ukraine, to 5.8 million left to the EU countries, and over 360,000 left to other countries. So the question arose what to do with those citizens who are abroad who do not have any identification documents, because diplomatic institutions were not able to cope with this influx of people, and the logistics of the shipping of documents was very complicated. Therefore, the government adopted the resolution that implemented the experiment project on issuing foreign passports of Ukraine and ID cards of Ukraine to the citizens of Ukraine that are abroad. So this was the first step towards the presence of the Migration Service via its front office, the State Enterprise document. This is our front office. They do not make any decisions. They only work to receive documents because they are administrators of the Unified State Register, and the State Migration Service checks the correctness of the documents that were received, and then makes the decision about printing. So the issue of foreign passports and also ID cards is important because it ensures that the citizens do not lose connection with their country when they are abroad. These ID cards are not used by our colleagues from Migration Service for the identification of our citizens. Nonetheless, at the first stage, we made the decision to open up mobile offices. This is the picture on the left. So there were minibuses used, and on the second stage, we understood that inclemental weather conditions are not conducive to it. So we opened the booths where people can come, can submit the documents to the inspectors and be comfortable when doing that. And starting June 2022, we started issuing ID cards and foreign passports. In September 2022, we started working with drivers' licenses, reissuing them instead of the damaged or lost ones. And in September 2023, we started issuing this residency permits to foreign nationals, to those who left Ukraine because of the war and lost their residency permits. And this service is also becoming more and more popular. Now you see the dynamic map of our presence in the EU. So Warsaw, that was in June. We are represented in Warsaw, Wrocław, Gdańsk, and Krakow. And in March 2023, we started working in Berlin, Germany, and Köln. And we have the stationary office in Berlin. This is the largest office. We started working in Prague, in Madrid, and in Turkey, and in the Slovak Republic and the Czech Republic. And we're planning for another stationary office. So as of today, we issued over 558,000 services. Of course, foreign passports are the most popular service, over 300,000, and ID cards too, because children who left Ukraine and who turned 14, they use this service actively, and they receive their first ID cards, but regrettably now outside of Ukraine. And another service, the reissue of driver's licenses, is becoming more and more important. Now you can see the way the stationary locations and mobile stations look like, but I would like to note that we were forced to do it because we now see a lot of steps, and they not concern only the administrative services. We are now in negotiations in order to provide information services, and we urge all the bodies to use our spaces to provide info stands, and we also have TV screens for information reports, because our citizens need to know what is happening in Ukraine, what steps the government is taking for their return and reintegration, what services are available for them remotely, and what is expecting them when they return to Ukraine, when they come back, how to restore their documents. And these centers will allow this continuous connection with our citizens abroad. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Дякую, пані Наталія.
Thank you, Natalia.
в Ютубі немає. Давайте
no questions in YouTube and Facebook, but if you please, maybe you're planning to open your presentations in other countries, other stations. We are always working on it because our diplomatic institutions and citizens ask us for it, and the UK, Ireland, the United Arab Emirates, our citizens need these access to administrative services, and we are now working on opening another office in Prague. This will be the second largest office after the Berlin office, and then we will see our logistics, how it's going to be, how the transportation services will work, what the needs of our citizens will be, and then we will think of how to expand our geography, our representation, our presence in other EU countries. Now we're thinking about the UK because there are a lot of our citizens who are in need of valid Ukrainian documents, but now we want to stabilize ourselves abroad to resolve some technical issues and then to expand.
Так, це питання буде, да?
Is that going to be
Тоді,
a
пані
remark?
Наталя, дякую вам
So,
дуже.
Natalia,
Насправді,
thank you
дуже
very much. This is a very important work. We are proud of you, what you're doing for Ukraine and for Ukrainians. And I would like to give the floor to Dmytro Lubinets, the Ombudsman of Ukraine. Dear colleagues, I have to apologize. My next meeting is scheduled in 15 minutes, so I have to leave you, but I'm sure that my representative, Olga, will finish this event for me. First of all, I would like to thank the Office of the Council of Europe for their support in writing this report, and one of my requests is for you to join this work on new legislation concerning the definitions, specific definitions and compensations, restoration of rights, reparations, everything that was mentioned in the national legislation of Ukraine. Now, on the international level, we are discussing the questions of establishing a fund for the citizens of Ukraine, but within we don't have the legal basis for it in Ukraine. Therefore, we need to start this work as quickly as possible. We are ready to be the basic institution for it, but we need expert support and support in these expert discussions. So if the Office of the Council of Europe joins us, we would be extremely grateful. And I would like to thank the International Organization for Migration. We have the head of the mission here, and I would be glad to meet you in person. And we have a range of projects, a range of things that we want to implement together with you, with other international partners. And concerning the acts of civil status, it was intentional. I am ready to carry out expert discussions, but I need the position from the Ministry of Justice. I need NGOs on board. And I'm convinced that the representatives of ZMINA will be present as one of the advocates
адвокатів зміни національного законодавства
for change, for amendments to international, to our national legislation, and I'm convinced that we really need to do this. And while discussing it, I see a lot of requests in social media where people are writing comments, and a large number of people drawing our attention to the absence of compliance of the procedure of the registration of acts of the civil status, and when our citizens want to apply to go to court because one judge makes a decision and the other judge refutes it. So maybe we need a separate discussion for it, and to invite the judges of higher courts for them to normalize it. I understand that we do not have such a system when one judge made a decision and the others follow. So maybe we would need some commentary or explanations from the Supreme Court.
На сам кінець я окремо хотів би подякувати. У нас сьогодні велика присутність, причому
To conclude, I just like to thank our partners, both online and offline, for your very active participation, for the interest that you demonstrated for this event. Actually, in the future, we'll organize similar event for every of our future special reports, including analysis of our recommendations and their completion. I think that this is one of the tools that indeed can demonstrate the efficiency and effectiveness of the efforts to reinstate the rights of our citizens. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish you successful completion of this event. Thank you indeed. Thank you very much. That does not mean we are done. We have a last point of our agenda, and we still have some matters and some potential speakers. So I'd like to offer the floor to our expert, Mrs. Senatorova, who was a participant in the development of the special reports, including recommendations. Yes, dear friends, good morning. Unfortunately, I am traveling to Gag now, and I will report there on issues of deportation for the Commission for War Crimes. I actually analyze deported individuals, and I work on the documents to be issued to the children who were born after full-scale invasion. So we've been working on it starting from 2014. Unfortunately, the sound is not very good. Oksana, we can barely hear you. The connection is interrupted continuously. I wrote my question. Yes, I can hear you, but I read the question in the chat. So thank you indeed. I will read the question. If Natalia Nolenko is still with us, we'll ask her to give the answer.
Пані Наталя, ви з нами?
Natalia, are you with us?
Пані Наталя Науменко, ви з нами?
Natalia Nolenko, yes, I'm here. Yeah, so the question is this. Question on issuing documents for deported individuals. Have you developed a strategy for the recovery of the documents for deported individuals and issuance of the documents for the children? Let's keep in mind that any deported individuals are still citizens of Ukraine. So if we talk about those who are at Crimea or occupied territories, we have the remote procedure for identification of the individual. So when this individual, let's say, is on the controlled territory of Ukraine, but has relatives somewhere in Donetsk, Luhansk, or Crimea, there is opportunity for this individual to confirm his or her identity through his or her relatives. And also soon Cabinet of Ministers will approve the procedure for remote identification of the individual, say when a child could leave Crimea from Donetsk, Luhansk, and is abroad, they can apply with our authorities, and then there is special procedure for identification, and this child would return to the territory of Ukraine for identification purposes without the need to do an additional identification. Oksana, are you satisfied with the answer, or would you like to specify something else, Oksana?
Нас не чути.
Unfortunately, she cannot hear us, or maybe we cannot hear her. So thank you for your reply.
Вона з'явилася.
Yeah.
Дякую дуже, дякую, все почула. Чекаю.
Thank you. I heard everything, so I'll be waiting for further steps here. I'm sorry, I'm in Netherlands. Yes.
Для тих питання для тих, хто
For questions,
в режимі
for those who are participating in Zoom
спікерів або
modality, do you have any questions to our speakers, or maybe
в нас присутні
to those who are here in the room? We have here representatives of all entities, including law enforcement, so you can ask any questions related to protection of the rights of what affects the individual. So while we're waiting for your questions, you can write them in the chat, or you can ask for the floor, and you'll be given the floor. In the meantime, I'll pass the floor to Anna Christova, Head of Council of Europe Project on Strengthening of Judicial and Extrajudicial remedies to protect the rights. And then we'll see at your potential questions. Thank you. Thank you, esteemed Olga. Well, actually, we are moving towards completion of this event. And here we are to summarize probably those main results that were achieved, respectively, on behalf of the Office of Council of Europe in Ukraine as an entity taking care of IDPs since 2018. We'd like to note some important moments. First, what we observed during this large-scale aggression with respect to consolidation of the efforts of all authorities, ombudspersons, people's deputies, for purposes to find solution to urgent questions. I'd say that the level of coordination and interaction to develop some draft bills, draft regulations is very high, unprecedented, I would even say. We've never observed this level of interaction since the start of aggression 2014, and probably this is what Ukraine can be proud of. Absolutely reasonably, and we will try to continue maximal support to generation formation of such platforms so that this joint work continues. Another point, it's very important that the matters mentioned in the special report of the ombudspersons with regard to the more affected individuals, and all these draft bills and draft resolutions deal with very relevant problems which have been
Це і питання
mentioned continuously since 2014 by NGOs, by international organizations. This is about confirmation of acts, deed of death, or birth, certificate of birth, the recognition of the diplomas or certifications issued at the occupied territories. Of course, these are matters related to temporary the residents of IDPs. I mean, the answers that couldn't be found before 2022, before large-scale aggression, they were not solved before that, but now they are resolved step by step. And what is important, according to the standards of the international community and the Council of Europe, will sort of support this effort further on. Another point, we heard a very important statement from Dmytro Lubinetz. He said that Ukraine is fully realizes its responsibility for the destinies of its citizens. Thus, it's on Ukraine to ensure all necessary mechanisms to reinstate the rights of all who suffered, who were affected, who were victims. And this says about the principles of subsidiarity. You remember that international organizations and court would enter into action only if national entities cannot do their work, but this recognition and realization of the Ukrainian responsibility is very important fact from the standpoint of human rights in Ukraine. And another point which is very important is that there should be comprehensive regulation of the problem, solution of the problems, including comprehensive mechanisms to ensure reparations for all those who were affected and suffered from the armed aggression. Together with our partners, we had raised these points many times yet before the large-scale aggression. I'm glad to see here all those who had taken very active position yet before the large-scale invasion. And it's a great pleasure for us to work on this project now. Council of Europe is finalizing the comprehensive review of compensation mechanisms for those who were affected by the armed aggression, and actually the mechanism which are already implemented or supported at the national level, including harmonization with the international documents such as a register of damages caused by the aggression. And we hope that very soon we will be able to present recommendations according to the results of that report, and then we'll continue working together with Ombudsperson Office on the implementation of these recommendations. Thank you indeed for this cooperation and interaction. Thank you, Han. We have two questions online. I will read the first one. If the housing was had been bought before 2013 and had not been registered in the register of property, what would be the procedure to reinstate the ownership? That's competence of Ministry of Justice. Unfortunately, we don't have here a representative of this ministry anymore. But we consider the question from Hocherietino. Village Council will make sure you receive the answer to your question. And another question, Yulia Karpovets, she's from Charity Fund Rokada. Question on assignment of pension to an individual who achieved the pension age. Do we have anybody from the pension fund? Could you move to the table? And while you are getting ready, I will read the question. The problem is about assignment of a pension to an individual who reached the pension age if
перебувала в окупації.
the individual could not timely apply for pension because the territory was occupied. You don't worry if you
Представтесь, будь ласка.
yes, yes, I'm Valentina Kudin, the Minister of Social Policy, Directorate for Pension Insurance. I'd like to know that People's Deputy adopted some amendments last year to the law on the state pension insurance. And actually, the pension can be designated independently on when the individual applied for it, even if the 3 months were actually were not complied with 3 months period. So anyway, the individual has entitlements. Thank you. We have a raised hand on of the population. Please turn on the screen.
Включіть зображення і звук, якщо можна.
Please could you put on? Yes, I'm trying to do whatever I can. Yes, good. Good morning. Yes, we'll listen to you. So, my name is Elena Kachumarovska. I'm advisor for countering the violence. First of all, I would like to thank for the opportunity to take part in this event, and I was happy to hear about the great steps that were done for Ukraine. Secondly, it's beyond the event, but still, it's about ratification of Istanbul Convention. And I have the following comment. We heard many presentations on very serious subject matters. I personally expected that the gender aspect will be taken into account. And we know that Council of Europe does pay a big deal of attention to make sure that this aspect is not forgotten. I think it also important for further progress and further development of the initiatives which deal with renovation of the rights of those who were affected by the Russian aggression. Secondly, we understand that Ukraine ratified the Istanbul Convention, but when we say that Russian Federation now is using the approach that they are not in Council of Europe, so they say they don't care what actually and any related activities, not only say accord how you can actually help now on the competitors. They cannot stand and this the trend I can say that for the future years we had very effective technical and expert cooperation between council and yes dealt with there with the balance involvement and We hope that we will be able to return it, and I'd like to say to present your attention to the Council of Europe, because partners, з якими ви працюєте, яке that have to do maybe that needs discussion separately, because now дуже їх багато, дуже велика, very effective way to help the people who are that they need assistance. So yes, thank you. If I spoke too alone, we can continue discussion on, for example, regarding the strengthening of the component, which is already present. Thanks to Ombudsman's office, that we can have future discussions on this topic. I apologize for not taking the time. And the last question is for today. Olga raised her hand. You have about 2 minutes.
Пані Ольго, ви підняли руку. Включіть, будь ласка, зображення.
Доброго дня, я вас чую.
Good afternoon. I hear you well. I would like to ask my question and to also report a little bit about the situation. My name is Olga Ridna. I am the head of the Charity Fund Development and Social Justice for Ukraine. We work in Kharkiv and Kharkiv Oblast with those who suffered from the hostilities. And I want to tell you that people who who were wounded with shrapnel wounds, that mine wounds, regrettably, we don't have this clear procedure of receiving the disability status of the acknowledging the disability as it is written in the law on the status of veterans and the social guarantees. So I wanted to suggest streamlining this procedure so that people were aware what their rights are when they receive this wound, or when they what the people who were physically affected by the war should receive this financial support from the community, or how they can receive the status, how they can receive the documents from the registry, so that people are not forced to look for this information elsewhere through the via internet or through the funds, so that people who are wounded, I'm now talking about civilians, not the military. There are also children. There are families with children who were wounded as a result of hostilities. For them to receive financial assistance, and when people are wounded, they cannot work anymore, and often they cannot support themselves. And there is a vulnerability category of IDPs, of pensioners, and they have social insurance, but people who were wounded as a result of hostilities do not have any kind of social support until they finally confirm their disability officially. So we need streamlined mechanisms and procedures for the civilians to receive, for wounded civilians to receive financial assistance for healthcare services and for rehabilitation. Thank you for your information. We will definitely work on this. Dear colleagues, our event is coming to an end. Thank you to all of you who are online and offline, and I would